Hello and welcome to 8-Bit Warriors GameMaker tutorial series. In this lesson we are going to look at adding collision detection to the grid movement which we first implemented in part 1. If you haven't already done so, I highly suggest going through part 1 now, as the existing code in this tutorial will be based upon it. You can find a link to the first part in the information below. For today's lesson we're going to start off by creating a new sprite with the dimensions of 32 by 32. This is going to be used for the object which will block our player. So typically I like to use something which stands out, but at the same time we want to be able to see behind it quite easily, so make most of it transparent. This enables us to overlay it on top of tiles while still seeing the tile behind it. So something like this typically works great. With that done, press OK, saving changes. We'll also need a background tile for our actual walls. Make sure that it's 32 by 32 and that you have use as tile set selected. And then thirdly, we're going to create ourselves a new object, and we will call it object block, and we will assign it the new sprite that we just created. With that done, let's go into our test room. As you can see, I have already laid down some tiles. What we're going to do is, after you've laid down some of your own tiles, go to the Objects tab and then select Object Block and overlay your tiles with the object. As you can see, preferably you can see behind it with the way that you've set up the sprite. Sometimes when you do this, it's really frustrating when you use a solid color something and then you can't see what's behind it, and it just becomes kind of a mess. Okay, so when that's done, we can save it up. And, if you play the room now, we'll see that we can still move through the walls because we actually haven't set anything up. But just give an idea of where we're going with this. Now what we need to create a third object, which we will call object grid. And this object is going to hold all the positional information about where our walls are and what spots are actually free for the player to move. We are going to use the value of 0 for free space and a value of 1 to represent a wall. So what we're going to do is add event, create, highlight the control tab, drag and drop, and execute code action. And here we are going to use a couple for loops to set up a two-dimensional array, which we will call cells. We will use the room's width and height divided by the grid size in order to set this up. I will write this out, and then once I'm done, I'll go over and explain how this works. First, I will create a couple local variables. You don't have to do this, but this will just help with the performance of the for loops which follow. So what we'll do is for I equals 0, I smaller than equal to room width, div 32, I plus equals 1. Then we'll do for j equals 0, j smaller than equal to room height, div 32, j plus equals 1. And then we can set up our cells array, two-dimensional array, cells ij equals 0. So what we've done here is we're using the room's width and dividing it by the grid size. And if, say, for example, your room's width is 640 pixels, if you divide that by 32, that's going to give you 20 cells. And with room height, if it was, for example, 480 and you divide it by 32, it would give you 15 cells. So in effect, this would give you an array of 20 by 15. So, and then by default, we will set each of those values to 0, which representing an empty space. If you're not familiar with for loops, I highly recommend doing so. I'm not going to explain this too much, but this is how we set up the empty array, and we will now follow with changing those values with where our walls are placed. In order to do that, we are going to use a with statement. And this with statement is handy because it's going to cycle through all the instances in our room, and we can use the the properties from each instance is x and y values to find where it's at and to change the cells array and set this value to 1. So we will set with object block object grid dot cells x div 32 y div 32 equals 1. So all we've done is taken the x position, the y position, divided by both 32. This gives us the position in the array, and we set it to 1, which represents a wall. Once we've done that, we can actually get rid of the object because we won't even need it anymore as the information is already given. By destroying it, we help with performance. If you're dealing with HTML5 or later on with iPhone or Android, it is beneficial to remove as many instances as you can. Okay, with that done, we can press OK, saving changes, and then we need to go into our object player, and we're going to have to add a few more if statements to check to see if the space in the corresponding direction is free. So the first thing we're going to do is look for just below the if keyboard check right conditional. We're going to add if object grid dot cells x div 32 plus 1 y div 32 equals 0. So what we're doing here is first we're checking where the player's at with it by checking his x value divided by 32. So say for example he was at an x position of 64 and we divided by 32, then he would be at a position of 2. But then since we want to check to his right, we're going to add 1, which will in effect check the x value of 3. Since we're not checking up or down, we'll just do directly y divided by 32. And then we're seeing if it equals 0. So we're seeing if this spot is free. If it is free, then we will commence with, we'll let the player move. So let's press OK, saving changes, and let's just play that right now and see how that works. But first, actually, in our room, open up the room again in the editor, and at the top, select Settings, Creation Code, and here we are going to add an instance of the object grid. Every room which you want to use the hit collision, you will need to add this in its creation code for the room. Okay, now we can test this out. Perfect, we are unable to walk through the wall when pressing right, but if you walk up or left or down through, you can still go through it, as we've only set up the right direction so far. Let's go ahead with finishing up the other 3. In Object Player and Step Event. Now for the up direction, again we'll do if object grid.cells x div 32. This time we want to look up, so we're going to do y div 32 negative 1. That will have us look above us in the array. Again, if it equals 0, do this. Then for the keyboard check left, we can actually just copy and paste from up here from the VK right check. Place it in, but make sure we change the +1 to a -1 as we want to look left. And then finally, for looking down, again we can copy from the up check and we can paste it in here. But again, since we want to look downward, we want to change the -1 to a +1. Alright, let's just finish this up here. Okay, with that done, we should now have a working collision detection system in place. Perfect. Not walking through any of the walls there. Awesome. Alright, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Again, you can find the written tutorial for this at my site at 8bitwarrior.com. There will be a part 3 coming shortly where I will also explain how to set up moving objects such as NPCs and such. Thank you very much again for watching.